A little bit of a difficult moment for her, but we are going to allow her to testify uninterrupted. And if we have any questions, we will save them for after the break, at which point the co-chairs and I will, the co-chair and I will ask whatever appropriate questions we find at that time. And with this, I would like to ask Ms. Brennan to come forward with her attorneys, if she so chooses, and take their seats at the table. And again, as you are sitting down, the red button here, this is Trenton, so the red button means go, that the microphone is on. And with that, I will turn it back to the Assemblywoman.
Good morning, Ms. Brennan. Do you wish to make an opening statement? Is that correct for today? Yes. If you need to take a break, please let us know at any moment. And at this moment, I'll take the opportunity to swear you in. The committee calls Katie Brennan to testify. Ms. Brennan, thank you for appearing here today. I am Assemblywoman Pinter Marin, and this is Senator Loretta Weinberg. We are the co-chairs of this committee. We understand that you're accompanied by your attorneys today. Is that correct? As you can see, we have a hearing reporter from the Office of Legislative Services hearing unit present. Your testimony is being recorded and that it may be transcribed for the committee, and it may be used in other proceedings. Do you understand that, Ms. Brennan?
Yes, I do.
Please note all of your responses should be verbal. We cannot record a head shake or a nod. If you do not understand a question, please ask for clarification. Otherwise, I am going to assume that you understand the question and that your answers are responsive to that question. Do you understand those directions?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Brennan, do you understand that if the statements you make today are willfully false, if you fail to answer a pertinent question or commit perjury, you may be subject to penalties under the law?
Yes, I do.
Do you understand that you have certain rights under the Code of Fair Procedure, including the right to have your counsel submit proposed questions on your behalf?
Yes, I do.
Does your counsel have any questions to submit today?
No.
No, thank you.
You are entitled to a copy of a transcript of your testimony at your expense. When such copy is available, do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
You have the right to file a brief sworn statement relevant to your testimony for the record at the conclusion of your appearance today. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
Before I proceed with the oath, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan. Please stand and raise your right hand. Ms. Brennan, do you swear to affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true, correct, and complete to that of your best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
Yes.
Please be seated and state your name for the record, and we will begin.
Just before you do, please turn off the other microphones that are not in use. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan.
Thank you. My name is Catherine Brennan, commonly referred to as Katie. Thank you to the committee co-chairs, Senator Weinberg and Assemblywoman Pinter Marin, Vice Chairs Kristen Corrado and Assemblywoman Nancy Munoz, and members of the Legislative Select Oversight Committee for inviting me to testify before you today. I am here today at the request of this committee to provide my testimony as part of your investigation regarding the policies and procedures regarding the screening of prospective employees and continued employment in the public sector of persons with questionable backgrounds, including any operations or practices concerning the handling of claims of sexual assault, abuse, or harassment. I will not be discussing any aspects of my criminal case because, to the best of my knowledge, the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office's review of the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office's actions with regard to my complaint of sexual assault against Albert Alvarez is ongoing. Therefore, I refer you to my account of Mr. Alvarez's sexual assault of me as reported in Kate King's October 14th, 2018 article in the Wall Street Journal. After I was sexually assaulted in the early hours of Saturday, April 8th, 2017, I immediately contacted my husband, Travis Miles, who was in Sweden on a 3-month Fulbright scholarship, and my good friend, Katie Baldwin, who came and stayed with me for several days while Travis returned, having to leave Sweden early to return home to me. On the evening of Sunday, April 9th, 2017, I reported the sexual assault to the Jersey City Police Department. But before I did, I called my friend, Justin Braz. Mr. Braz is not only a professional colleague, but a personal friend. I asked Mr. Braz to come over to my apartment so that I could tell him in person about something important. At the time, Mr. Braz was becoming involved with Governor Murphy's campaign, and I needed someone who knew Mr. Alvarez to know what happened. I knew that if I were to continue to pursue my career in housing and government in New Jersey, continue to be involved in the Murphy campaign for governor, I would inevitably cross paths with Mr. Alvarez, who was then working as the Director of Latino and Muslim Outreach for the campaign. I needed support and protection. I told Mr. Braz that Mr. Alvarez had raped me the night before. Mr. Braz is presently Governor Murphy's Deputy Chief of Staff for Legislative Affairs. At that time, I was employed as Program Director with the Hudson County Division of Housing and Community Development. On Monday, I tried to have a normal workday, but was unable to function. I called a rape crisis hotline. I called a therapist's office asking to become a client immediately. I left work to go to the Jersey City Medical Center Emergency Department for a rape kit. On April 17th, 2017, I wrote a letter to Mr. Alvarez to confront him and tell him that what he did to me on April 8th was sexual assault. I've provided a copy of my letter to this committee so that you can see that I asked Mr. Alvarez to refrain from ever contacting me ever again. I sent my letter to Mr. Alvarez via Federal Express to Governor Murphy's campaign headquarters in the Gateway Center in Newark. After I sent the letter to Mr. Alvarez, I felt emotionally prepared to report the sexual assault to the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office to pursue a criminal investigation. In August 2017, I was invited to work as a policy advisor with the campaign on the Economy, Jobs, and Anti-Poverty Working Group. Mr. Alvarez was still working for the Murphy campaign as the Director of Latino and Muslim Outreach. I continue to work with the Murphy campaign because I did not want to let the assault stand in the way of me working for the campaign and Governor Murphy's administration. As a victim of sexual assault, I should not be the one to give up my career goals in favor of the career goals of my rapist. And although I wasn't in the office every day, I feared running into Mr. Alvarez, and I did see him repeatedly. The first time I saw him following the assault was in May 2017, a little more than a month after the rape, at the Murphy for Governor campaign office. In October 2017, I saw Mr. Alvarez at a gubernatorial debate at William Patterson University. At that time, Mr. Braz, whom I had told about the sexual assault the day after it happened, was working for the Murphy campaign in a paid staff position, labor director. Mr. Braz was present at the debate. I observed him actively engage Mr. Alvarez in conversation to allow me to walk past Mr. Alvarez without having to speak to him. On October 19th, 2017, I saw Mr. Alvarez at President Obama's event in Newark to support Murphy for governor. Later, I saw him at a volunteer event for Getting Out the Vote. In early November 2017, following Governor Murphy's election, Mr. Alvarez was appointed Deputy Director of Personnel on the Transition Committee. In this position, Mr. Alvarez reported directly to the Director of Personnel, Lynn Haynes. In this role, Mr. Alvarez was responsible for making personnel and hiring decisions on behalf of the Murphy administration. I was working on the Transition Committee in the role of Policy Director for the Housing Committee. However, I was also in the process of contending for the position I now hold with the administration, Chief of Staff at the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency. Mr. Alvarez held the authority to hire for my position. As a result, my attorney sent Mr. Alvarez a letter requesting that he recuse himself from the hiring process. I do not know what, if any, role he played in my hiring. Throughout this whole time, I was waiting on the Hudson County prosecutor's decision. In late November 2017, I believed that the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office, who told me that a decision was near, was preparing to charge Mr. Alvarez. Believing that his arrest would generate news coverage, on December 1st, 2017, I allowed my friend on the transition team, Mr. Braz, to alert Transition Council about Mr. Alvarez's potential arrest. It is my understanding that Mr. Braz conveyed the substance of my allegations without conveying my name. I do not know the identity of the Transition Council whom Mr. Braz contacted. No one asked me for additional information or advised me if any action would be taken on my behalf. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Braz became Governor Murphy's Chief of Staff for Legislative Affairs. Later that very same day, December 1st, 2017, I was advised that the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office had declined to take my case. There are no words to describe the hollowness and the disappointment I felt. The trauma, the invasive tests, the questioning, the waiting were all for nothing. They said they didn't believe a jury would convict, so it would be irresponsible to arrest. In other words, they didn't think that people would believe me. I told Mr. Braz that the criminal case was not moving forward. But now, Transition Council knew that Mr. Alvarez had sexually assaulted someone. I hoped for action. I hoped for justice in another form. It never came. Just a few days later, on December 5th, 2017, I had to pass Mr. Alvarez in a doorway to attend a Transition Committee meeting. A month later, on January 16th, 2018, I saw him again at the governor's inaugural ball. According to the Wall Street Journal, members of Governor Murphy's transition team, including Chief of Staff Pete Camerano, were aware of my sexual assault allegation against Mr. Alvarez, but reportedly did not know the victim was me. However, just the knowledge that there was an allegation of sexual assault by one transition team member against one of the transition team's senior staffers should have been enough to trigger action. Yet still, nothing. I officially became employed as Chief of Staff at the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency on February 20th, 2018. The Murphy administration gave Mr. Alvarez the position Chief of Staff at the School Development Authority. And although we did not see each other every day, I lived with the constant threat of seeing Mr. Alvarez at joint meetings of the administration's Chiefs of Staff or around Trenton. I wanted to stop Al Alvarez from ever attacking another woman again. I wanted survivors to receive justice. I wanted New Jersey to do better. I wanted survivors to be heard. So I kept working to be heard. And though I was nervous to tell my employer, in order to prevent any future issues, I determined that I must directly alert the administration. And on March 20th, 2018, I met with Governor Murphy's chief counsel, Matt Platkin, in Jersey City. I told Mr. Platkin that Mr. Alvarez had raped me. Mr. Platkin was horrified and told me that he would contact the Attorney General's office to see if anything could be done. So I was filled with hope. I was optimistic that the administration would help me pursue justice and protect me in my workplace. On March 22nd, 2018, at a separate meeting in Princeton, I additionally told Governor Murphy's deputy chief counsel, Parimal Garg, that Mr. Alvarez had raped me. As a friend, Mr. Garg was disheartened. He said he was sorry. According to the Wall Street Journal, in April 2018, Mr. Platkin told Mr. Alvarez's then boss, New Jersey Schools Development Authority Chief Executive Charles McKenna, that it would be good for Alvarez to separate himself from state employment. No one told me what, if any, action the state was taking regarding Mr. Alvarez in response to my complaints to Mr. Braz, Mr. Platkin, and Mr. Garg. No one told me whether Mr. Alvarez had been asked to leave state employment, and I do not know what, if anything, was actually communicated to Mr. Alvarez at that time. But I do know that he continued to work for the state until October 2nd, 2018, when he resigned after Kate King from the Wall Street Journal contacted him about my story. The next communication I had with anyone at the state regarding Mr. Alvarez occurred on April 24th, 2018. Heather Taylor, Chief Ethics Officer for the state, told me that the state could not take any action because Mr. Alvarez and I were not state employees at the time of the sexual assault. The administration took this position even though I continued to have to work in Mr. Alvarez's presence, both during the campaign and after, when he was employed first by the transition team and later by the administration. Once again, no action. Once again, my voice went unheard. I heard nothing further, and I still sought justice, and I still wanted to stop Al Alvarez from assaulting again, and I still wanted more for the survivors of New Jersey. I thought that if any administration could make progressive reforms, it would be this one. And so on the evening of Friday, June 1st, 2018, I emailed the governor and First Lady Tammy Murphy. I asked to have a meeting with one or both of them about a sensitive matter that occurred during the campaign. I did not indicate that my sensitive matter involved Mr. Alvarez. Within the hour, Governor Murphy responded, "We know you well. Hang in. We're on it." I felt a glimmer of hope. Governor Murphy included his scheduling team on his reply and invited me to contact him or Ms. Murphy if they proved not fast enough in scheduling a meeting. Governor Murphy did not ask what I was referring to when I said sensitive matter. No meeting with the governor or First Lady Murphy was scheduled. But rather, that same weekend, Jonathan Burkon, an attorney from Perkins Coie LLP, who served as counsel to the campaign, contacted me and advised that Mr. Alvarez would be leaving the administration and state employment. I asked why. Was Mr. Alvarez being fired? Was he voluntarily leaving for another position? In a follow-up call, Mr. Burkon would only say that he can't reveal the reason for Mr. Alvarez's departure because it's an HR matter. Based on Mr. Burkon's representation, I believed that Mr. Alvarez was leaving employment with the state of New Jersey in June 2018. However, in early September 2018, 2 months later, I learned that Mr. Alvarez was still actively employed with the state of New Jersey. As a result, believing that I had exhausted all options of reporting Mr. Alvarez's sexual assault to members of Governor Murphy's campaign, transition committee, and administration, my only power left was my voice. I told my story to the Wall Street Journal. In response to my story, a joint statement provided to the Wall Street Journal, Governor and Ms. Murphy stated, "We are confident that this allegation was handled appropriately by the administration and policies and procedures were properly and promptly followed. However, it is clear the process during the transition was inconsistent with our values and the hire should not have happened." Why did I have to tell my story to the Wall Street Journal for the administration to acknowledge that it should not have hired Mr. Alvarez? I should not have to be here today. I should not have been attacked. I reported my attack to the police and the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office, and my report went unheard. I reported my attack to the campaign, transition committee, and administration, and it went unheard. I asked to report my attack to the governor and first lady, and my request went unheard. I and no survivor should have to tell their story to the newspaper to be heard. I had access to people in the highest positions of power in the state of New Jersey. And at each turn, my pleas for help went unanswered. Somehow, it wasn't a priority to address my sexual assault and working with my rapist until it impacted them. We all have a lot of work to do. It's not about one bad actor. This isn't about one incident. It isn't about one hiring. This is about a pervasive culture of assault and violence. It is every person who looked the other way instead of acting. It's the millions of survivors in New Jersey before me whose attackers never saw conviction. It's the survivors before me whose employers kept perpetrators of violence and harassment. It's the millions of survivors who were only able to come forward years later to find out that it's too late. We can work to prevent sexual assault. We won't be able to change the entire country's culture overnight, but we can each play a part. We can believe survivors. We can stop he said, she said from always becoming he said. We can improve the justice system. Prosecutors, judges, and juries can receive training and remove bias. This, honorable members of the legislature, this is your role. We can enact laws like Maryland and Michigan that make it easier to pursue justice for survivors of sexual assault, such as allowing prior and additional accusations to be used at trial. This is your role. We can remove the 2-year statute of limitations on sexual assault claims so that when all else fails, survivors can pursue a civil case when they are ready. This is your role. We can improve workplace hiring and employment practices. Since I came forward, 2 other women have said Al Alvarez attacked them before me, but his record showed no trace. Character reports matter. This is your role. These reforms did not exist for me or for the million survivors before me, but they can exist for the next survivor, because unfortunately, there will be a next one. It is our role to ensure that when they report, they get the justice that they deserve. Thank you, and I welcome any questions that you have at this time.